We are back. Welcome to another episode of Untitled. We were trying to get a guest on for this one, but every single person we asked said no. Sometimes it do go that way. Sometimes life do be that way. But luckily, we do have 1.5 experts, I'd say, on the emea region overall. I'm not gonna. You can figure that one out for yourself, however you want to interpret that. But yeah, we're cracking right on. Third region of our 4-part preview, EMEA.
Unfortunately, mate, in EMEA, we do have this like odd habit where, I mean, there are some people who, we asked and they said, I can't, on the day we had to film, unfortunately, and, wanted to come on another time, which maybe we'll see in the future. But we do have a bit of a habit of acting like, we're Gandalf hiding the secret of the universe with some of these things, I was sure it's almost like everyone knows something that I don't. But yeah, anyways.
I mean, it's always been that way, to be fair. EMEA's always been very protective of its secrets. I remember there was like a. Do you remember when the game was starting out and there was no coach slot? And
Yeah,
I think in America they would have been more open to this, but EMEA was just like, yeah, we are not using spec. We're not using overall spec. What if they come in and they steal our strats? What if they come in and they steal our setups? It's like, brother, if I wanted to steal your setups that bad, one, I don't need to steal your setups because you're like the 25th ranked team with like this. You're just like the 5 best players in Western Andorra. Like, this is not. You're not a team I am looking to for. This is how I'm going to win a 2025 World Championship, right? I am not. You're not hiding some magical secrets, man. You're like, this is a time when Pond still hadn't figured out you can break the Killjoy ult with util, right? And we had the first guy ever to do that, and everyone was like, wow, bro, you can do that? You can use util to break other util? You can break, bro. Anyway.
Oh man, I remember some of the secrets that were going around it. Because
Yeah.
the weird thing is, like, I grew up watching CS, obviously, and there no one really minded about sharing more high level concepts and talking about it. But in Valorant, it just seems like everyone has
People,
either paywalled it or if they act
yeah, I
like it's
mean,
like
it's early
bunch
on
of
still in the game, to be fair. People get protective about this stuff because I remember in League, it was like, there's stuff that's like so basic in League, which, like, for example, if you have more minions, the wave will push into that, will push against you, basically. Stuff like that was like being paywalled for like 5 years. Like Gate kept, like, only if the 4 top laners in the world knew, like only Wicked and like 2 other dudes in Europe and like 1 dude in Korea knew how this works. It's like, okay, bro, whatever. Anyway.
that. As you said, it's like only four or five people know. In Europe, we act like information that probably like all of tier 3 up until tier 3 knows. We act like it's secret.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, and as with the other ones, we are going to start with the free seed out of this European region, which is Foot Esports, making their first appearance at international. When was the last time they appeared? You remember?
It would have been champs in Korea, I want to say.
Champs 24.
Yeah, would have been champs 24.
Just double check that. Yep, that is indeed the case, where they obviously bombed out in their group 0-2, Paper X. They had that okay run at Shanghai before that. They were like they were a fixture on the international stage for a couple of years. Just didn't come anywhere close this last 2025. They are back a little bit now, it seems. So, good for them.
They always needed like a proper rebuild, and they finally kind of got it eventually. I mean, if you think about it, it's what 4 of the players have changed since they made the last LAN.
Yeah,
is that correct? Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah. I mean,
it's only Yetuje who survived, I guess, which makes sense as he was the youngest and like probably had the most potential, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think they finally got to the point where kind of they got that full rebuild on.
Which is understandable why it took so long, because, I mean, for people who don't know, the thing that was always like the thing about Foot was basically we always knew the Turkish region had a lot of talent, had a lot of like shooters. Basically, was always a little bit. No, they always fell short a little bit. There was always question marks in terms of the IGLing across that region. The big thing about Foot was like a lot of Turkish teams that have ended up succeeding. I wouldn't say it came out of nowhere, because I think that team was around. That team was prominent in challenges the year before, although with a different IGL, I believe. Yeah, it was different IGL.
I think it was Fallen still.
No, 2022 it was Fallen. But that's what I'm saying. Like, so they didn't really come at 2021. They were like a good team. I don't think they really came close in the international tournaments. They didn't really, like, they were okay. The best they got was they were like fourth in the LCQ, I think, for champs. Like they were, yeah, they were the last.
The one they played against Guild, right?
Yeah, they were the last Turkish team standing in that one, which was Oxygen, Supermassive, and them were the Turkish teams at that time.
Yeah.
Supermassive just made the land before that as well, so they were kind of like, I don't think any of those teams were expected really to make it through the LCQ in the end. It was going to be Guild or Liquid. Everyone knew that. But yeah, this was kind of the thing with them basically. 2021 they were okay, regional team. 22 they don't make it into the start of the quote unquote new league, like the pre-franchising VCT. They kind of have to rebuild. Farland comes in at the start of that year. They kind of build themselves up. They obviously go to VRL after stage 2. They win VRL, reverse sweep over Vitality. And then they come into the league. We're not really expecting much from coming into the league, but turns out
they were predicted last, mate. They were predicted bottom, like complete bottom.
Yeah, well, it was. I mean, they went.
It was
to that...
when they had Mush, and then they brought in Atta, and I remember even they were predicted last, and then they had a bad first 2 games, I want to say, and then they brought in Atta captain, and that's when it kind of that run started, where they made all the internationals.
Yeah, first two games they played against. Well, they played Heretics, but Heretics were like the other team was supposed to be last at that point, and then they got completely stomped by
Liquid.
They got stomped by Liquid, and I think that's when they brought in. That's when they brought in Atta, and that's when they sort of saw a large turnaround. To forget this right now, but Atta was like very, very highly, like he like exploded onto the scene a little bit when he went to that team. He had been good before. He was on was it Thunderbolts or was it it was Thunderbolts,
It was
right?
Thunderbolts.
Yeah. Like, so he comes up, he's like really good, and his team never really did much at the internationals themselves, but this was like the team out of Turkey, which like shocked everyone basically for a long time in terms of they kept making lands. Farlin like was able to bring it all together, and then they kind of come in this rebuild in 2020. Like they bring in Yatujay, who's like extremely widely regarded at that point. Like him and Wuta were just tearing up tier 2 in Turkey. But it just never really came together for the last 2 years. So now they brought in Zeus, who's supposed to be the guy who 2025 who's changed it all, didn't really do it at all. They brought in Cross Ali in the off season, which people don't really think anything of, to be honest. Let's be real. But they kind of finally made the full turnaround, and yeah, they've obviously made it to land here. They've good performance from them. The road to the tournament. Oh, and obviously they changed the coaching staff as well. Just like all changed basically, just completely swept out the old regime, as it were.
Bambino somehow survived another regime change.
No comment.
Shout out to Bambino.
Yeah, shout out Bambi.
But it's getting suspicious how you're always at the area of smoke, you know? No, obviously for everyone out, we're joking. Bambino is an amazing assistant coach who's had. I would say he's actually had quite an unlucky time considering some of the situations he's been in.
Yeah, I mean that is like
see him finally get it right.
Yeah, that is esports. That is VCT at the end of the day. Route to the tournament for this team: 2-1 over Gentlemates, 2-1 over Navi. I believe this was Navi with Kolosha. Yeah. 2-0 over Liquid, 2-1 over KC, 0-2 against Heretics Resurgent. In playoffs, they got their first seed right in their group because the group wasn't that strong, I'll be honest. Heretics were there, but Heretics were not competing for first seed in that group, which helped them a lot. They got first seed, 2-1 to Eternal Fire. That somehow was a qualification game for Masters. Make it there. 1-2 against Vitality in upper finals, I guess. 1-3 against Heretics in lower finals, and pretty lopsided series, to be honest. Like 1-3 makes it sound better than it is. If you look at the actual maps, because they won one first map and then they got completely destroyed 3 maps in a row. So they have we have to kind of emphasize they have kind of limped into this tournament, right? Like low-key, they've limped in. It's not been like a massively convincing.
Well, it hasn't been that they stormed the group stage. I mean, that's something you have to. They did completely dismantle the group stage. Only lost the game that didn't really mean anything to them whatsoever. And in fact, I'm sure some of those players actually enjoyed the results that that loss brought
Yeah.
in terms of who got eliminated and who got to stay. So they did I guess the good part in terms of putting themselves in the first seed, and then once they got to the first seed, it seems like once they won that game, they probably just relaxed a little bit. I think once again we're in this environment in VCT where qualifying is almost more important to most teams than actually winning at some point. So once you have qualified, it just feels like people relax, and teams like this relax a lot, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have a culture which just
seem to be the case.
doesn't regard the domestic results as worth anything. Basically, that is the case. To be fair, we should mention they haven't had the best showing in EWC qualifiers either. 2-0 over Navi, 0-3 to Gentlemates to qualify, 1-2 to BBL in lower round 2 to also, yeah, that wasn't a qualification game, but that would have got them to the qualification best of 5. Again, a bit of lopsidedness as well. But yeah, let's get into it with them. So starting off, as we usually do, best map. And this is an interesting one. It's, in my opinion, it's Ascent. They played it 3 times so far. Obviously, only came into the map pool for the qualifier, for playoffs rather. 13-4 over Eternal Fire, 13 over Vitality, a 6-13 loss against Heretics. This would have been pre-rotation, it would have been bind. I don't think there's any question about that. It was their best map. It's a pretty big hit for them to lose it. They were always great on that map. It really helped their play, or worked really well with their play style. They get Ascent back at least. I think that is something that is. I mean, we have a thing in Europe. Turkish teams always good on Ascent, right? Always good on Ascent.
Yeah, this has been the rule since the start of the game. It basically has been that you never play against a Turkish team on Ascent.
Yeah, and Ascent is a little bit different now, to be fair. Okay, so first off, what they're running in terms of comp, it is Neon, Phoenix, Sova,
and Sova.
Yeah. So adopting the double duelist, most of the comps I've seen have been double duelists. Historically, there's always been a double or even triple initiator map. Now, part of that just comes to the age of the map in terms of, like, I remember the DRX triple initiator comp that was like the big thing, the big like innovation for the first time in ages, because it was all like a Chaos over Jet map, basically, right? For a long time. And DRX ran triple initiator, I think with Fade. Like, this was like LCQ 2022, and this was like the big, oh, wow, what an innovation on this map. There have been like times at which teams have run like crazy stuff in this map. Like, I believe Crew ran like Phoenix Rainer during Champs in 2021.
Loud were running Breach Phoenix at some point when Neva were really in the middle on this.
Yeah, Liquid also ran Phoenix. Quite funny that it's always been a little map where you can run Phoenix because where you look at these angles,
how the lobbies work, and
yeah, just like very susceptible to Phoenix Flash. You just clear everything when you do it. You just get a lot of space off of it. But yeah, teams are still figuring out this map, right? What do the new comps have? Well, noticeably weaker Sentinels. There's still a lot of teams trying to make Cypher work, stuff like that.
Some playing Vise as well.
Yeah, teams playing Vise, but it's just not as strong as it used to be. Part of this is just the general strength of these characters. Part of this is what other people are running in their comps. We'll go into it. The control on defense is noticeably weaker. I think this is maybe less about the comps and it's more about just how people learning how to play the game, right? Because this was always a thing. Basically, this has always been our Dust 2 as a map, right? Development. It's always been put a guy here or put a guy here, line here. The round gets won or lost depending on whether you can start that line when they walk out there. That was kind of how it developed, and then it became a thing of trying to flush this guy out with util from here, and it eventually became a thing of not really, like, just smoke it and have to go fast here and can't get past this line and blah 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 blah, right? Another important thing that's changed on the map: the strength of executes for the attacking team. This is something big I've noticed, right? Because you remember this for a long time, it was basically, and you remember this from the Vitality series we had in 2023, right? So, for a long time, it was basically attacking team goes here. Attacking team does not go B unless there was a very good reason for them to go B. Because B was way too hard to go to.
In general, just the actual choke points you'd be able to go out into B was super hard. And if a team played B somewhat correctly, and how I remember I used to train my teams, for example, is that if they contested this area and then were able to fall back into almost these positions and then contest these choke points, by the time that the attackers were actually able to get through without losing a big number of players, the rotations had already come and you'd kind of get killed basically
Yeah.
by the time you're playing a bomb or just before it.
Yeah, exactly. This was also the original Odin map.
Yeah.
Doesn't even work now because they put a wall up there, funnily enough. But you put Sova on here, this would be like the easiest line in the world to just spray down, basically recon, spray down. So much pressure. You could play it from sight. Obviously, this is like you've got incredibly strong Odin corridors through here as well. So the original Odin
I think
map.
a big issue with the map is that also that you were allowed for a long time to kind of just throw util that stopped people without ever actually being able to be touched, because there was no way for you to be able to contest these guys without a really
Yeah.
cool util set idea or like an ultimate ability, you know. So it was very safe to be able to just completely spam these small choke points without being touched.
Yeah.
Kinda.
And
You
this
had
is
just so much downstream.
and this is the big thing that's changed on B, and which is like flip the strength, because with the comps you now have now, and with how like util works now, and blah blah blah. Okay, whatever, you can spam from here. We don't give a shit. We're playing Neon Phoenix. We're just going to run through here. You can't put enough util on the chokes because we nerfed all the sentinel util. This used to be like if you went here, you would die. This was like when you're putting like double killjoy mollies and all that sort of stuff on there. Now, if you look at the scaling on these teams, they can actually get through here, and then they're just like, fuck it, okay. You want to stand here, you're completely isolated. Like if you peek out, you will die. You want to sit in caves, we will just come and kill you. We have still 2 Phoenix flashes by the time we get to caves. We're going to kill you in there. You're securing a corridor basically for Neon to run through, and then you're taking the jewels up there, right? That's kind of a big change that's happened on B. On A, also the execute has got significantly weaker as well. That is like a huge thing. Because the comps you were running before were like you were
It
running
would just be the classic Jet, Sova, KO, Killjoy, Omen.
yeah, exactly. So it was
Most
just like,
standard
all right,
every single time.
I'm going to knife all of sites. I'm going to have like a lot of target detail. You could also run breach on this map. I don't remember how much it was got run. It was like it was a niche thing, but it was something you do as well. We had a lot more ability, basically like target stun, target scan, all this sort of stuff to cover the entirety of the site. And as a result, attackers kind of had to play here and maybe here, and then just look for a really good retake. If you remember, like obviously, like talking about the Vitality series from 2023, like they're like an unbeatable set at that point, and we were like fixated on trying to beat them, and we kind of screwed it up because we focused too much in that series on putting util down to try and take the A site cleanly, without kind of doing enough to really disrupt the retake. Because we kind of saw, okay, there are holes in how they play A, but it's like, well, that's not really the point. The point is that they can, even if they just have a 5v5 coming back into A, unless we can somehow get the lines up here, we're not going to actually win a retake. They're going to have so much time to easily get back in. So I think that's changed as well, to be fair. It's a lot easier to go into A as well, because it's a lot easier. Well, it's a little bit harder to go into A, I think, with how teams are playing the site, with the ability to just flash out randomly, contest, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, like it's become a stronger site just by default, and the B site is easy site to take now for the attacking team, I think. And if you watch the foot, I'm going back to like the actual team we're talking about. If you watch the foot game against Vitality, for example, a lot of just fuck it, we've got these 2 guys, straight B hits, play really far off AW. I can't remember, it was either here or here. They put the Cypher strip every round and just ignored it essentially, just to stop you pushing through to mid pretty much. And it was just A splits, and it was just like the and the over and over and over and over and over, and it makes sense, right? You have two good duelists, including Zeus on that team. Zeus, quite notably, kind of has that movement slash Primy Peak style, I'd say, where he's just really good at these swings. He's really good at this movement. This was kind of like what I always noticed with him way back to the Challengers. I was like a little bit unsure how good is this guy going to be on LAN, and I think he's obviously good. I think, to be fair, he got hyped a little bit more than he should have coming, because he was a Howl before this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And they had historically had that run to the finals where he was almost like going mega, right?
yeah, and people were really hyping him up at the time, because like no one expected that team to be anywhere essentially, and he kind of turned them into contenders overnight. It felt like. Who was on that team? Yeah, it was Zeus, Anima, Gloomy, Ventiti, and Kuren. So obviously Kuren's on.
Oh, stacked team actually. So quite a stacked team.
Well, it's a solid team, right? But to be fair, most of those players haven't had the same tier one. Well, certainly beforehand and even afterwards, haven't had the same tier one experience as the team players on the other team, which was Loiter, Combat, Lavok, Shelasun, and Rose, but only like Shelasun, not making tier one, right? But people like were not thinking of this team. Like this team was like kind of on and off as well during the play, even that playoffs, and even that like end of that regular season. So Zeus kind of like got a lot of focus on that basically. You're like, wow, this kid's so good. I was always kind of like, okay, how good is this kid going to be on land? Because his peaking style, it's a lot easier to do it when you're on significant ping. Like there's a peak disadvantage from being on high ping, which obviously Turkish teams are always on high ping online. I think he was a little bit better than I expected, but I think he was a little bit worse than some people were expecting of him. He was a solid player, but he wasn't like, he didn't steal the show when he came into the league, obviously, because Foot didn't win anything. But yeah, that's always been a big feature of his game. And they're good at that. They have better U2 and better use and combos. The comparison here, obviously, we're talking about premium has to be to full sense. I think they're better in terms of the U2 than full sense are, in my opinion. Maybe just like you would say probably slightly weaker shooters, where it's hard to tell without actually matching them up. But the attack in any case is explosive and is effective. And Heretics did stop this attack, to be fair. 8-4 scoreline, a lot closer than basically that scoreline suggests. It essentially requires Benji kind of had to pull a madness here and Boo had to pull a madness, where Benji was just like super aggressively playing thing, like tripping here, camming here, like taking it every single time, pushing them off and keeping off B lobby to make them force them into A, which they don't want to go into, or force them to like do these splits, which were like a lot weaker than just the straight up plays. I don't think their attack has been figured out by any means. I think they're still very, very good on the map, and it's going to be very hard for teams to play against them. And the defense is just solid, to be fair, as well. It's a lot of, from what I saw, a lot of basically playing in cubbies, like doing stuff like this. Oh, you got a guy here, you got a guy here, kind of semi-trapping, insta-TP into here, looking for a trade-off here, looking to basically trade down to like a 4v3 in your favor. Really good like util combos, really good like 2-3-man fights. Always been a thing that's hard to play against on the center, even if it's not the default, because obviously there's a certain amount of risk by doing this. But yeah, there is a lot. Yeah, go.
Kind of what I want to mention about this, and we are in an interesting situation actually, because we have a kind of a big meshing of worst maps, best maps, and the teams actually playing these maps against each other. So it's I need to pick where to say what. But I think the big thing for me is that the comp they're running is actually quite standard in EMEA. It seems Vitality was running the same comp, just with the Vice instead of the Cypher. This variation seems quite common actually, and the issue is that there is a footballist seem to understand actually how to play against this comp with their comp. And for example, Vitality, who I will also touch on when we get to that portion, kind of had an opposite approach, and that stylistically really worked out for Foot on Ascent. And the big thing is that you need to realize with these comps compared to comps of past is that comps of past relied on a lot of heavy setup for a Jet to be able to get in, break the lines basically, because again, we're dealing with very small, very tight bottleneck choke points, right? And you needed the Jet and you needed the KO and the Sova, and you needed basically really pretty setup executes to be able to break these. So basically it would rely a lot on teams being able to get out with Jet and then have flash combos and arrows basically to be able to clear different like these initial zones, these kill boxes, and then you'd basically scale into sight, and you'd want to scale into sight with the concept that you always have a stairs guy coming in, so that if there is people backside, that basically this guy's going to get wrapped. And that's why you saw, for example, teams can get mowed down a lot if they focus too much on trying to just run out here and then use utility here. And it did almost become an almost paradoxical situation where teams were very unsure whether, are they supposed to save their util for here? So if the teams are bunkering, or are they supposed to, for example, use the util to get out onto site? And then again, you saw a lot of mismatches in this case in the past. Whereas now, for example, the comps that we're dealing with are comps that do very well in close spaces in front of them. So, for example, when they're going out here and when they're going out into short, for example, which used to be a really hard area to actually execute into, right now it's quite easy with these comps because again, your Phoenix flashing, your Neon stunning out of hand, both are able to play off of their own utility, so it's super easy for them to break through these choke points, right? And that's why you're, for example, Footballist having the approach of playing heavy mid and always seeming to find a pick in these inside areas is super good, and it's a super correct way of playing, because again, if the enemy team are going to play these areas close with the one man or the rotator, then again are able to punish them with this util. And once you punish this guy, it's a lot easier to then isolate, the lobby push or the side guy, right? And this is what Foot did really good. They knew that basically they had to clear these close areas and these kill boxes, and once they did that, it seemed like they were able to just storm site most of the time and just trade well and have an advantage, right? So that's what they did super good, and I think it makes sense within this meta. And then on to Vitality side, I think we'll talk about it when we get to Vitality.
Okay, yeah, I think that pretty much sums up in a sense. Let's move on to their quote-unquote worst map here. This isn't probably their worst map. They didn't play this in the finals where they got, or in the bracket final when they got destroyed. Was going to be map 5. They are clearly worse than some other maps, but it's not much to talk about those maps. I think this one's interesting. Like they've had relatively favourable vetoes for most of the split. It should be said. They've had like a lot of favourable vetoes this stage. So this works for talking about the limitations a little bit anyway. So comp on split. Neon,
Raze, Viper, Neon, Omen, Sky.
Yeah, right. Neon, Raze, Viper, Omen, Sky. I didn't register Raze click, so that's nice. Clean from that, honestly. Anyway, the thing I want to highlight on this map, right, as a general point, this is the map where everyone knows what the other team is doing at all times, more than any other map, right? Probably because there aren't really any random timings. Both teams have like chokes where it's very clear. It's hard to completely lose control of these chokes. That's why you kind of have this thing where if this is smoked off, sure, you can't get, like, you have to just be smoked off them to get into here, but even then it's a pretty fucking easy line for the enemy team to play. A's a little bit weird nowadays, but I think people basically play up here and then they like play a guy here and there's not really a threat. And on the attacking team, it's also pretty clear. You don't really have, it's hard to have an X factor on this map in terms of individual player timings, in terms of like team timings, that sort of stuff. You can't really like Sociably or C2A or whoever can't really take a random timing on this map and get value out of it. And they got like, yeah, this is like a problem for Foot, because I think Foot really want to have these sort of timings, have had this like element of surprise. So Foot played against Eternal Fire, right? And they got taken down to the wire on that map. It was overtime. I believe it was overtime. Let me see. No, 13-11, but still, they were taken down to the wire, right? And this Eternal Fire team obviously could be very good. I think people overrate them a little bit on the basis of getting a couple of like good wins in groups, basically. You would expect Foot should be beating this team probably. But their attack failed them completely in this game, basically. They were down 8-4 at the half. Only got there because they won pistol down to Eco. Could easily be like a 9-10 loss. And it was good to see them from the same sub-region. I don't think these players have really overlapped in terms of teams, but these are team players that know each other to quite a large extent. They know how each other thinks. You're not going to have to, like, you really aren't going to have the timings in that case, right? And they just got rolled on them in that game as a result. It was like very clear, just EF knew exactly what they were doing all the time. And then Foot knew what they were doing all the time, and their defense was easy. And then against Vit, it was the opposite. The attack was fine. Granted, you're preying on a bad Vitality defense in general. Still a weak point for them. They've got better, and it is still a weak point. They have a really bad tendency of giving up untradeable deaths, which you cannot do against this team, because this team has the BBL quality where
they just roll you over. Once you give them a pick, they know how to basically just 5-man group. And
they 5-man group, and the way that they swing angles and stuff like that is really good. Like this was like the thing that we struggled against Vinarg when we were playing against BBL. Like the players just could not get their heads around basically the timings that these guys like peak on essentially. Because it's like always like slightly off timing. It's always like a very weird movement, very weird peak out, stuff like that. The NRG players could not get their heads around that for a while in that series, and we got it in the end eventually, but it took some time, right? But yeah, their attack was fine against Vitality, but their defense was terrible. And it was terrible because, in my opinion, Vitality are an extremely experienced team individually. I didn't fall for what they were doing, so I want to show you around here. So, like for context here, round 4 they triple pushed mid. Vitality read it instantly. It's hard, fucking hard. Trap them. Round 5 they had like a good bait up. It worked. So this round 6. They're throwing out a million smokes onto mid in this round. Just a complete shitfest. Walking up into their smokes, looking for a very sociably kill here. Vitality read what they're doing. Now they know what they're doing. They see all these smokes, they see all this sort of stuff. Prophet just boost up here, make sure they can't come from the right. He knows that they're going to hide in the smoke on the left, and probably not going to come out. And if they do, he's going to be ready for it. And as a result, you'll see as you watch how this round plays out. Basically, Vitality give them nothing. Vitality don't give them like the random kill they're looking for on mid to basically seal out this round. The entire round comes down to can stop playing in this spot, get an AWP kill if this team eventually comes back to B, or obviously they've got a good line on A here as well, to be fair, but they're not budgeting for me this round.
One thing that is, I think I want to note here also, if you just want to pause real quick, is that Foot are biting super hard on a lot of Vitality's fake utility.
Yeah.
Like if you notice on mid and on A, they've committed 2 people each to basically holding smokes that no one is behind. I mean, you see, Chronicle hasn't really ever. I mean, perhaps he's tested it in the previous rounds, but at this round he's not really testing it. But because they're so afraid of the potential A look, that they are keeping 2 there, and because they're keeping 2 there, they're also keeping 2 towards mid, and then you end up with Vitality basically just taking the correct read and taking B. Looks like.
Yep, and this round, as a result, basically comes down to can Zeus get Sop get like a kill that I would call this a bullshit kill because you're playing a Fade Omen here, right? Like Fade's got to dog you. They even do an okay job in terms of defending it, but like he gets forced out and they're not making it back into this round realistically. Good Chronicles here, like he looks how he had to like throw util out to try and defend mid, try and slow down mid. Yeah, it's just not possible. It's just a very hard round for him to win as a result. And this is the thing that worries me about this team in general. Synergy on this team is good. They have some great set pieces, sociably good shepherd of players, let's put it this way. I think is a good way to describe it. When they get stuck, they get really stuck. And I don't know how deep the sort of the macro and the understanding on this team really goes yet, because it's also a fairly young team in terms of, well, not, our social is like 37, right? But in terms of how long this team's been together and how long some of these players have been playing top level, like yesterday, Becker's been there a couple of years. Social Please kind of only broke in like into the top tier like a year or 2 ago. Zeus has been there 2 years. Sop is brand new. Sop was playing Premier like not so long ago, right? Crossed Ali, I don't actually know. Has he been around?
Knocking around tier 2, but not as much as
like
as much as the people he's playing against in Vitality, for example.
Yeah, he's been on tier 2, and he's not really been on too many contenders even in those tier 2 teams. To be fair, even yeah,
he was pulled straight from the academy, pretty much.
Yeah, but. And like people look at this, like the little set pieces and little micro plays, 2-3-man plays on these teams, which are very, very good. But they look at that and they think, "Wow, this team is so deep in terms of how they're doing stuff." But it can kind of often, you'll notice, it's going to be the opposite. If a team's really, really good at those set pieces, little plays, and they're making you focus on them, that can kind of mean they don't really have that strong of a foundation yet. It's a credit to the IGL and who has got responsibility for doing that on the coaching staff, that they're good at it.
A lot of the time when you see gameplay like Foot are showing right now, it is a lot of intuition. It's a lot of 2-3-man good, like well communicated rounds, basically, and it is a lot of individual players being ready to make plays together with other people, basically. And when that happens, you see basically what you're seeing.
it's a strong.
The issue is that when you freeze up, you freeze up hard because you do lack the structure. Like structure in general is there to help you in the hard
Yeah,
moments. It's not, there's a
not
lot
a,
of misconceptions about structure, but when a team plays like footballists do, you're kind of living and dying by the sword. If you're feeling good and if you're ready to basically make those 2-man plays all the time, then you're going to look good. Whereas if the enemy team does something that you're not sure how to respond to, that's when you see teams freezing up, and that's kind of what a best example you're seeing with Foot right now, basically.
yeah. It could be a good sign for a team's long-term development because it can be the basis for getting to that really high level at the end of the day, right? But it's not necessarily the best sign for them going short term, particularly into an international tournament, because it doesn't indicate it either way, but it can mean a lack of depth. And looking at how Foot play, I think there is a little bit of a lack of depth to how they play, and obviously they have been struggling a little bit in the last few games. We can obviously make excuses for them and say, well, these games didn't really matter in the EMEA playoffs, but we can't really make that excuse, to be fair, with EWC qualifiers.
The one argument I did see is that they're playing apparently on old patch, so it is a bit hard for teams where they should focus on London or EWC qualifiers, right?
Yeah, that is a little bit of a thing, to be fair, but yeah. Okay, let's keep moving. Key player on this team. What do you think?
I'm interested in who you have, because there's, in my opinion, 2 people.
Okay,
But go on.
I'm giving it to Zeus. And I'm giving it to Zeus in the context also of obviously good player. I think he's the player who needs to step up for them to be competitive at this tournament. His Phoenix has been pretty poor so far, even just statistically. So like 9 games played, I believe, on Phoenix. Yeah, 9 games played on Phoenix, 0.75 KD. Obviously, we don't look too much about KD and ratings in terms of assessing a player's impact, but that is still pretty poor for that agent, pretty over a reasonable span of time now, reasonable sample. And if you look at it, he just looks really uncomfortable on it. I don't know why, because he should be good in that sort of agent. It really fits his style. It fits how he moves. It fits how he aims, all that sort of stuff. Very comfortable game to Prim in a lot of respects. I think, particularly with the Neon Nurse coming in and all this sort of stuff, they need him to be able to carry more weight from that sort of alternate duelist position, basically, to have like a lot of like a primary duelist, even, because if they play one duelist comp, I'm pretty sure Zeus will be on the duelist rather than Sop. Because I believe Sop.
It's hard to play with them, actually, because
Yeah.
both are primary duelists. Both have never really shown that they can play anything else.
Yeah, I mean, Sop hasn't played in anything but Neon in a long time, right? I think he was even playing it at. Were they even on the Oh no, he wasn't even on the he wasn't even on the team because he was underage for the kickoff.
Yeah.
So we didn't even see him make kickoff. But yeah, it's a weird thing for them. But yeah, it's if we assume they're going to keep playing Neon +1, which I think, to be fair, even after the nerfs, it does feel like a lot of teams are probably going to still play Neon +1. He needs to be able to carry his weight a lot more than he has. And he has that potential, but he hasn't really realised it yet. So I think that's my key player for him, because if they want to make a run, he has to be a lot better than he's been. And he is kind of really important too. That they have to have that 1-2 punch, basically. So.
I think for me, the honorable mention is sociable, but it's kind of obvious in the sense that he's the IGL.
Yeah, we love naming IGLs for this.
He's the marquee man, but I'm actually going to go with Yetuje. And okay. I think the reason, and Yetuje's performances have actually been stellar, by the way. He's been incredibly good.
Yep.
And you'll remember this, back when we had like the Foot Vitality rivalry, because it seemed like we were playing against each other every week, and they did get the better of us a lot. A lot of the things that would basically, you'd be able to beat footballists in terms of macro, and you'd be able to beat them in terms of having a better game plan and doing a lot of things. But then they would have a guy, and it was, I remember the most Yetuje and sometimes Atta, where they would do things that just completely change the round and win the round, right?
Yeah.
And it was almost like Yetuje was, it's almost like the team had one way of playing, and Yetuje was like the fail safe. Like if something goes wrong, he is going to bail us out, and he's going to do something, whether it's a lurk, whether it's a peak, whether it could be whatever. That is going to help us. And it also seemed like he wasn't second IGLing, but it was almost like he was that player, that pin you leave on the other side of the map that would help the IGL kind of, if the IGL is struggling to figure out what to do, he would be the one who could figure something out, basically, right? From what I understood. And I think in this team, where Sociable, from my understanding, will be he's not going to be the same sort of agile as Fallin. I don't think Vlad is the same kind of coach as Guys, so I do think they probably lack a little bit. They probably don't have such a strong identity as they used to. It seems like that they do rely a lot on these individual / two-man, three-man plays together. I think having a player like Yetuje is super important for them, and I think if basically you get the situation that we've been seeing recently, that Sociable is struggling maybe to make the correct adaptations, or that in general their two-man plays are not working, you need a player like him to basically be able to give you another win condition. And I think that's why he's the most important. That when and this is what I've seen from them in the split where they were doing super well, is like when they needed something, he is the guy who does something. He is the guy who gets the great timing, who gets the good flank. And in terms of internationals, I want to see him be able to basically almost double down on that and be able to be the guy that says, okay, look, when my team needs me, I will be there to make the play. I will be there to basically make the round winning pool, right? And I think that's why in my head he's the most important, because he's not an IGL, or he's not necessarily a second IGL, but he's almost like, you know what I mean, like a game changer. He's like your win condition. And then some teams have it and some teams don't. And it's really good when you do have it, when you have a guy who, like, you can basically set in your head that he's going to make something happen if we need it. And I think that's what Yetuje is. And I think he's really good at it when he's good. And I think he's always going to be a good shooter, but sometimes maybe he's playing a bit too passive for my liking and not making those same gambles. And I want to see him go to the international. And if he is making those gambles, and if he is doing, kind of has that mindset that I am a game changer, then I really do believe that he can almost basically completely change the trajectory of a game. And I think he'll be the important one for me.
Yeah, that's fair. I went looking up the stats from the 2 series we played against Yetuje of Vitality, because I was curious, and it's funny. Like right now, but he's basically, when they're like losing, they get beaten by Heretics, he's very, very like low first kill, first death participation, highest VLR rating on the team. The 2 series that we played against them, so it was a best of 5 in convergence in off season, and it was the best of 3 in stage 1 where we did beat them. The games he's losing now, again, he always it's like highest round score, like 2 first kills, 3 first deaths, that sort of thing, right? Against us, he was him and Atta, lowest VLR rating each time, extremely high participation for their roles, like second or third on the team, playing obviously Sentinel.
I just remember vividly that every time you thought you'd win a round, he would be behind you, and he'd just do something that switches it completely. And it was the most jarring feeling ever, where like you thought okay, the round's good, and then you would get anxiety because you don't know where he is,
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see from him. I don't want to see him basically being that guy and kind of embracing that.
Yeah. I think that's fair. So what do we expect from them? What's a good tournament for them look like?
A good tournament for them looks like making out of groups.
Yeah.
I think realistically, I struggle to find the way they're going to make it out of groups right now. I think if they come into London, and we are talking about a very small turnaround time here between Split, EWC, and London.
Yeah.
And of course, you know this as well, that when you do go to these tournaments, you have media days. You don't actually get like a full 5 days or 4 days of practice, even if you're there 5 days before, right?
It's very much what you can do with the time you've got.
Exactly. And for me, I think they aren't ready as a team yet to basically to be able to deal with some of the things they're going to play against. I mean, I can see them in full sense is going to be a super interesting cage fight match, right? But I struggle to see how they could beat, for example, an NRG. I struggle to see how they're going to do against these teams that will know how to play on internationals, would know that, it's a big difference knowing what works in international tournaments, knowing what doesn't work. And I think for this team, a lot of their play style might not actually translate quite well if they don't have the same confidence about it, and if they don't have the same qualities that they did on regionals.
Yeah.
So expectations wise, I don't see them making it out of groups, but I mean, they are a team that if they're playing great, they can do a lot of different things. But I struggle to see that kind of multiple win conditions and deep gameplay that you kind of need to be able to win in internationals, right, or do well in internationals.
I mean, to be fair, we're talking about experience. Vlad's been to every international tournament since the game starts,
with the caveat that he was a caster at all of them, outside of Brazil.
Yeah, outside of Brazil. But there's a good streak. He knows how to win internationally.
He knows how to get there, which is a lot more than I could say.
Yeah. All jokes aside, I was initially a lot higher on this team, to be fair, but one pretty bad EWC run it doesn't matter that much, but it is something.
It's also that obviously it does seem like they honeymooned quite a lot after those changes, right?
Yeah. And the more I
You
think
want to be able
about
to
it,
see if they can come back from that.
and also them playing against Full Sense, because of that opener, I think only one of those teams can make it out of the group, most likely.
I mean,
think
old footballers, for example, I would back them to beat Full Sense because Geis and Fallen did have like a little bit of that we know how to get a job done kind of, and they seem to
Yeah.
struggle against the actually the higher level teams more so, right? They
Yeah.
never really had an issue of beating teams they should beat. Whereas this team, I think, is like you'd back them to basically smack up a really good team, but I can see the world where if they get drawn into like this prison fight gameplay with Full Sense, that I can see them coming out, not knowing how to basically cool themselves off and actually finish it,
Yeah,
right?
this is a problem. I think people are, I mean, I don't think we're alone in this view because I've seen some tier lists, but like I start putting them quite low. I think of the non-Chinese teams, if I had to pick 1-0-2, this is a team I picked a 0-2 at this point because I think they're probably going to come out the worst against Full Sense, and then whatever team goes down to the 0-1 bracket is going to be most likely. We still think the two Chinese teams plus one. All three of those teams are kind of sort of teams where they'll just lose them, and
Yeah.
like even in an upset, right? So that's their problem, I think, and I think that's why you kind of have to. Obviously, there's a chance for them to go a lot deeper, but I would be
I think
surprised if they can do
kind
better.
of also just to give a final point for this, I just think that style that they have right now that works so well in the NBA also works a lot better when you are familiar with the people you're playing
Yeah,
against, because then you know the tendency. A player like Sociable is super smart and super good at noticing tendencies of the people he's playing against, right?
yeah,
And that doesn't work the same if you don't know the team you're playing against, and especially when you're playing against the likes of Full Sense of the Chinese teams, for example. You don't know, like, it's very hard to keep up with all regions,
yeah,
and especially as a player, but even as a coach, you will just get shocked when if you get overwhelmed by the things they're doing, and then lose the kind of almost dick smacking match, then
yeah,
it can be overwhelming.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, if they make playoffs, it's a good tournament, I think. And if they make playoffs, who
100%.
knows? But yeah, I don't think
I think this is more of a long term team right now. I think
Yeah.
they're looking for how they kind of get to champs, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just this is the first steps basically for them. Okay, now we're on to our favorite team in the entire world.
Love them, mate.
Ad-
Absolutely love them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't averaged out certainly, so individually for some people. Team Vitality. So, we had a pretty good track record that last split in terms of stuff we said was going to happen coming true. The one thing that we were a little bit off on, and Hipson was extremely right on, was he saw Vitality. I think were they 1-2 or 1-3 at that point?
Oh no, that was before the last week, so they were I think
the 1-3 down bad.
1-3, yeah,
down bad, right? Like struggling to not in their hands for playoffs anymore. Had to beat Pacific and hope other results went their way, which they did. And he was like, "You can't count them out. This team could just literally just run it back and just win the entire split." And I mean, they were one map away. And like, obviously, we saw Heretics coming, we saw GE coming. I don't think we saw Vitality bouncing back like this. To be fair, like they had the potential to do so, but it was a surprise that they actually put it all together.
Mm.
It
does seem like they basically, I mean, once they qualified, obviously it does seem like they it does happen with teams, right? That when you think you're about to die, and then you get like this one last chance, that some teams are very good at using those chances,
Yeah.
and they've used it magnificently, I would say. I'm not sure who the catalyst behind it or what the catalyst behind it would be necessarily, but it does seem like they got that second chance and then used it fully, right?
2-1 Liquid, 2-0 Fnatic to qualify, 2-1 Foot in Uppers to get to the Grand Finals, 2-3 against Heretics in the Grand Final itself. Like big results. Like you can't even say, oh well, they just got like a good draw. It's like, no, you beat Liquid and Fnatic in succession. Fair enough.
It is a bit of a question mark in my head, like how Fnatic that was basically, and it does seem like that wasn't really their true side, right, of Fnatic. But yeah, definitely a legit run into playoffs, 100%. And then it almost always also winning the finals, Heretics managing to come back, I guess. But
yeah,
I mean,
like
almost
legit
being able to win,
performances, I'd say, yeah,
100%.
So let's talk about their best map, right? Which would be Pearl. 13-3 against Giants, 13-3 against Liquid, 17-15 against First against Heretics, so 4-0. This stage on the map, even when they're struggling a map, they just seem to get.
I would say this seems like Pal is really good at this map, and I saw so many similarities in how BBL played last year and how they're playing it now. I mean, I could just run it off real quick, and in my opinion, there's one key point that allows them to be so good on this map, and it is actually almost what Anders touched on last week, which is the way they control spaces. So, for example, they are super comfortable at leaving Chamber in B and basically allowing him to basically control this open area. They also, I think, play the Sova over the Fade, which again makes it a lot easier to actually have deep B info. But the one thing is that they are super aware that they want to play these almost positions, backdoor positions, and play to make these the kill boxes, right? And the key person I would say for me in on their Pearl, and this is something I've noticed about Profek a lot, is Profek. The way he plays is just amazing on this map. Like, it fits him. And Profek was one of those players on Smokers where he was very good at basically puffing his chest out and making it seem like you're running into 4 people when in reality he was the solo anchor. He's really good at that. Here, I remember speaking not Corrode, sorry, Abyss. He was super good at this as well. And you see Profit kind of just playing these deep lying positions and just making it impossible for enemy teams to execute. Like, to me, it seems like teams aren't even getting a chance to plant the bomb most of the time because of he's super comfortable at holding this ground and just making it so I say, okay, you can come out, but I'm going to kill you in this area. I'm going to kill you in this area. And again, he understands what the kill boxes are on this map. He understands that you don't want to stop them here. You want to stop them here. You want to stop them here. You want to stop them here, right? And he is the big reason why I think they're so good on this map, as well as the way they play Chamber. Those 2 points, I think, kind of allow them to just have this super solid, almost always have a really good defense. And I think this is one of the only maps where they have a solid defense as well, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing. Their defense has gone a little bit better across the board, but it's still not great in my opinion. And there are 2 things I had in my mind in terms of what. And then when they attack on this map, I will say it's fine. Good players, experience, double initiator. You can prod. You can prod a little bit mid round still. Like it's double initiator. They run the chaos over on this map. They have really good site takes with the initiators, all this sort of stuff. You can argue maybe they rely a little bit too much on ult rounds in terms of their attack because they seem to struggle early in the half. They go late in the half, they string them off. So it's a little bit versus Heretics, for example, where lost pistol, lost like 5, like first 2 gun rounds, I think. And then they went like Neon ult, KO ult, Astra ult, 3 rounds in a row, 3 really good ult rounds, like ult-centric rounds apart from maybe the Astra ult. Maybe a little bit too reliant on that, but to be fair, we glazed PRX of being good at this, like this being like the thing that makes them the king of 13-9s, 13-10s, right? So we can't really complain too much about it. Yeah. In any case, attack's fine. The defense is really good on this map. And there are 2 things to it. One, yeah, as you say, really good in terms of how they understand mid. Like they don't.
How they understand basically the kill box on the map is basically perfect, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like really, like they're playing these positions for like flood and retake. They're generically good across the board at these sort of floods and these retakes across other maps as well, which is unusual, I think, a little bit. We kind of tend to associate this more with teams with generically good like cohesion, generically good fluidity. I think this is more being drilled into them than anything else, to be fair. I expect...
This seems like Pal. This does seem like...
and I want to say Pal... good as well, because there's a bit of Fnatic DNA in terms of being good at that stuff. But yeah.
Potentially. I think it's just... I think Pal has... I do feel for him because he's been basically put in a position where anything but winning everything is a failure, right? And that is a lot of pressure. So it also with when you have that many, you know, superstar players, it's very unlikely that the coach is going to get credit for the things he does because it's always just going to, you know, basically attribute to the players. But this map specifically does seem like he just gets the map and he understands exactly how he wants his team to play, and they execute it super well. So really good from him.
And also speaking of the superstar players, they do benefit a lot as well, to be fair, from this being a map where they can basically set stuff up based off player independence, is how I'm going to put it. So, Chronicle on Chamber, Circuit on Neon, Prophet on Astrolite here, whatever. Yampi and Sayonara on the KO and Sova. These 2 are basically supporting the other 3 wherever they want to like pop up. But you can basically run these like almost this 1-1-1 setup across the map with like very strong players to take the first peak, and then ability to come to them and just instantly make it to a 3-1-1 somewhere to support them, basically, right? And there was a round that I had identified here to look at as an example of sort of this very typical setup for them, which was, see, this is right. It's just like the first, I think it's the first gun round, first like full gun against heretics, and this is like a good example, right? Just I don't think anything remarkable happens to them. I'll just have a look at the setup, right? Fairly aggressive angle here. I think he's near to ult. Yampy's Prophet's playing very smart in terms of B, playing the backward positions. Dirk is all the way out mid here, taking this very deep line, holding onto this deep line. You can see Yampy supporting him here. Cernar supporting any potentially fall back onto A. But they're able to run these setups, right? And it's just great for them because their number one problem on other maps and previously is they couldn't seem to really figure it out. It's kind of hard to play these independent setups nowadays, to be fair, in Valorant, just how the game's developed, just how comps are developed, all this sort of stuff, right? And as a result, you kind of saw this tendency in other maps, and I'm going to use, like, just thinking of Bind, for example, right? You kind of had this thing where it was like, you just had this weak 2-1-2 all the time, basically, where you would just have, I think it was always Champion Prophet on B pretty much. It was always Dirk and Chronicle on A. Starnow would rotate. And the result of how they played, where they were set up, particularly if they then switched them around, in terms of familiarity that players had with each other, they were weak everywhere, it felt like, in these 2-1-2s. Unless they had like a great two-man hold on a particular map for whatever reason, they looked weak everywhere. And I think, like, to be fair on Pearl, they just dodged that issue entirely. And they're getting better at it in general, but it really does help that they're able to give the Chronicle in particular its independence on this map that it doesn't really get elsewhere. I think that's like a low-key quite an important thing for them.
Yeah, and again, it just seems like they just intuitively understand where they need to play on this map, and
Yeah.
I think actually we can almost instantly segue this into Ascent, where they
Yeah.
do the opposite,
Yeah.
and it's almost like if they thought about the map like they thought about Pearl, I think they'd be so much better at the map, right?
Yeah.
And so we did pick this map for their worst map.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing: go watch them against Footlist, mate. And what we mentioned about Footlist, how they played in mid, and what I mentioned about how, you know, that Footlist are super good at contesting people who are playing close with the comp they have and the util they have. Vitality have a decent understanding, but they are doing a big thing incorrectly, and this is what's leading to them losing Ascent. And you also mentioned about how they have a habit of losing picks without being able to trade them, and it's happening a lot on this map. So what Vitality wants to do on this map on defense is they want to push the lobbies, and then if people try and play mid, they want to try and hold them in mid. And this is a very old way of playing Ascent. It's a fine way of playing Ascent. Unfortunately, what Vitality didn't understand in this meta, and what don't understand in this meta, that you cannot play basically for both. So what Vitality want to do is they want to have A lobby pressure, B lobby pressure, and then they want their one rotator to basically hold off the choke, and it's an old style of waiting. And then what was happening was Footlist would run up mid, and then they would neon stun Phoenix Flash, and this guy would get isolated and die every single time. What Vitality need to do on this map is realize, okay, if we're contesting, you know, A lobby, and we have a situation where, for example, let's say we have A lobby like they were doing a lot, and on the same time we have a decent line on B. I want to see Vitality realizing that we don't need to have bodies inside these kill zones. We don't need to have people trying to hold these chokes. What we need to do is we need to let them in a la Pearl, and let them and kill them here and kill them here. And if Vitality switch this style of basically being able to play a lot more backed off setups and realize, okay, once we control lobby and we can, like, let's say insert, or we can just have one jiggling the line, we're able to kind of then switch off into more of these setups, for example, where instead of trying to contest them in here and here, we're contesting them in this area and in this area, right? And I think if Vitality did just that change, it would get instantly better on Ascent for them, honestly. So I hope you're listening, pal. Maybe you'll test it out. I really do think that if Vitality realize that we can consider it the same as Pearl, that we can have these deep lying players who aren't necessarily trying to their best to fight, live and die by here, but rather trying to make it awkward for the teams to come out here, it's instantly going to get better. And that's the big thing I saw with their Ascent, you know, and that's the I think the reason that they're struggling, for example, is because they're trying to play almost an old style. And you could play, back in the day when you're playing as KO and Sova and you force the enemy team to use their drone and their knife, then these positions did become a lot more playable. And you remember, for example, how many times our teams even would get mowed down playing these positions, or how many times our teams would mow down people. But it doesn't work right now in this meta because you're playing as Phoenix and Neon, right? And if you're playing as Phoenix and Neon, you need to realize that you want to pressure them. So you want it to be, so for example, we want Durka to come out and take a peek here and pressure this. We want to force them to use their only Sova drone or whatever info utility they have. And once they've done that, and once we know, okay, they're going to have to use, and we've given them the pressure that they have to use utility coming out of this choke point, then you're going to be in the best case scenario that they're using utility to come out here, and then these positions are going to become so good because now you can basically kind of crush them in this area, That's what I want to see from Vitality. And I think if they fix that, for example, I could see their Ascent getting a lot better as well.
Yeah, I think that's a fair diagnosis. I mean, we have seen basically that there's a tendency when this team, again, when this team has, when its defense rounds, when they're ugly, man. Because they just basically they play the angles wrong. They get picked off random. They get pulled apart. This was a good route to sort of see them basically getting pulled apart. Prophet basically comes out here, just gets domed by 3-man peeking a link, sure, but then they're kind of like the way that they then put positions up rest around, it kind of doesn't make sense. Like they had the neon push up to like here, where it's like into mid, where it's like, okay, sure, you are technically stopping a walk up, but in reality, you're not actually going to stop them if they want to spring out there. There's a lot of that sort of stuff basic about it. They could also change the comp, to be fair. They could try double initiator. They could try the chamber like Lev does. But yeah, I mean, this is what it comes back to, right? This has always been like definitionally a set that's kind of always been a 2-1-2 map. We can argue whether that's still the case now. I think at least those 2-man and 3 sets sound become more important on B, maybe less important on A. But mid is kind of too tight for defenders to really play like heavy 1-3-1 double rotated concept, in my opinion. But yeah, you're seeing this round just like you'll see the like they're doing nothing basically, right? But they're just holding, just like the camera operator isn't even catching it, man. Like
for example,
that's reality of playing.
If you want to pause real quick,
yeah.
That was actually not. That was almost could have been a decent round with the positionings they had, but unfortunately, they just show on the choke point. They're trying to fight instantly when the team is coming out the choke point. If they jiggle a little bit more, use utility to refight it, then they're gonna have so much more success doing that. Like for example, Sayonara is in CT with Phoenix and Sova is there. I want to see, for example, Yampi being able to just chill for a second and say, okay, let them come out. I'm going to stop them from coming through this choke point. I'm going to basically play tiki-taki with you, or tiki-taka with you, as we call it. And Sayonara then, and then Durka then, who are in the choke points ready to collapse onto that kill box that I explained, then they would have had like a lot more chances, rather than just peeking and letting them kill you basically for free.
Yeah. And I think you're looking at their attack as well a little bit here. The attack's okay. But it does really, what I didn't notice, it really feels like this team really wants the ability to basically push and pull opponents a bit and get to good post plants. They like the attack all, but their scopes semi-soaks. They like hero buys. They want to prod a little bit. The XX and pops a little bit weak to me. I think this round was a good show of a couple of things, basically. So if we watch how it is. They hang back here. Like they take aggressive. They're good to dodge like initial util, all that sort of stuff. That's all nice. They're going to use everything here to get Sai around sight. You can see here. Wall, they use his ult, blah, blah, blah. They're not really moving that well behind him. They're waiting for TP is completely up before they then finally take the run into here. So they're not really, they're using him basically as a pure drone, not really exploiting him to actually physically take space off of it. Sova's Cross Alley just ends up sitting up, gets the slank here, sits campaign the entire round. Look how little space they really have to work on this post plant. We talked about this thing with A before, where it's like, okay, this is like the post plant thing. It's kind of hard to, unless you take space to defend against a team just retaking on you. And look how like compressed they basically get to here, right? Like this is a problem for them, right? Yeah, I think this is like this is a good exhibition of a round of Vitality.
And Foot played almost exactly like I said, by the way, that they were fine letting Vitality come out, but they were super focused on killing them. And like you saw, for example, Sop just holding this position and spamming. You saw them from heaven, for example, trying to get in like those little chip damages, and it just allowed them to keep and maintain space rather than trying to overfight and die and let the, and Ascent is a map at this point with these comps that you need to play this way. You need to almost, for example, say, okay, we're going to keep this, and then we're going to make this hard for you, and we're going to make you claustrophobic, and we're going to make you have to take positions that you don't want to take, where we're going to be able to flush you out with good utility, right? Like they force them under heaven, for example, and then one Phoenix flash completely kills the under heaven guys, right? Like Vit are playing this super well, actually, and I want to see Vitality play like this as well.
Yeah. So, moving on. Key player. Who are you saying?
It's hard with this team, man. Super hard with this team. I would say in general, Profek is the key player for me, because I do think a lot of the things he does, like he needs to be on and needs to be good for it to work. And I think they're a team that kind of they are a bit stiff in some ways and can break quite easily. So I think Profek is the important one. Like obviously Yampi is important. Obviously Chronicle, okay, Sayonara has actually kind of almost lived up to some of the expectations, which I was doubting a little bit whether he'd be able to, because he had such insane expectations, mate. He was, hailed as the best thing ever in Tier 2. And he is actually living up to those expectations quite well right now. But I think for me, Profik is the one who, like, again, almost like a Yetuje, where he does things that maybe don't show up as much on the scoreboard, but they're super, super crucial for them. And I think especially with the way he plays anchor positions on defense, and how I explained, and how he can almost sometimes be almost a single man army, I think he's the one that is super important for them having a good defense sometimes,
Yeah, I think that's fair. The one thing I'll say with Profik is, I think, to be fair, like he's kind of like Yetuje in regards of, he can have like an awful show on the scoreboard and still have like a massive impact on games, to be fair. And I think that has been the case. He has been maligned a little bit in the past by fans of both BBL and Vitality, where it's like, okay, you guys don't understand the game if you're blaming him for this performance, right? Because like, he come on like some crazy, like quite poor scoreline, but then you actually watch a game, it's like, okay, no, well, if he doesn't do the stuff he's doing, then they're not going to do well. They weren't going to win this game. They weren't going to be in this game in the first place. He is very self-sacrificing in that regard. Like he gets a lot of shit that he doesn't deserve, basically. And like the question basically is just, his team needs to keep trusting him, right? More than anything else. So I'm not gonna say Profik, just because I don't.
That would be agreeing with me.
Yeah, that would be agreeing with you, first off, which you can't be doing, and second, because I think if Vitality lose trust in him after what he's basically done over the last his career, basically, particularly over the last couple of stages, then they're just stupid at that point, to be honest. So I'm not worried about that. I think like he'll do his stuff and he'll make the space, and it'll be fine. Sayonara, obviously, you can say potentially important. He has great numbers right now. I think people are going to ramp up expectations of him to land to a level which he will not meet. I do not think he will put up the same showing on the international stage. If he does, obviously amazing. But I don't think he's integral to him having a good showing, right? I think he'll still be good. He'll be like a VLR rating 1.05 sort of player. He'll be good, fine, whatever, who cares? I think it's Chronicle. And the reason is, it felt for a while to me, and this was even true at Champs, that Chronicle was not finding a way with just terms of, I guess, maybe the roles he's playing, you can blame it on, maybe you can blame it on the style of the teams, maybe you can blame it on a lot of different things. There was a while where it felt like Chronicle, obviously the numbers were still fine, wasn't really having as much of an impact on the game as you'd think. Like he wasn't basic. He was kind of like a bit invisible, particularly from a coaching / anti perspective, right? Like if you have a sensible player who you're not checking from the anti perspective, then that's often the case that something's wrong with your team, right? You know this from historically speaking. And to be honest, at Champs, we weren't really, like when we were doing the prep and I was doing all that sort of stuff, you weren't really checking for Chronicle. He was solid, but he wasn't changing the game. He wasn't finding a way really to dictate the pace of the state of the game on his own. That was kind of the story at Champs. I think that's the story early on in this split as well. I think this stage 1, he has started to step up massively. He's finding ways to like basically dictate the pace and state of the game from whatever position he's being put into. They are putting him in more favourable positions on some map, which does help. But he's like, his level is up in terms of actually impacting the game is at one where he hasn't got to in a minute. Like he's been a lot better. And I kind of think at this tournament they're going to live and die off of how good he can be in that regard. That's kind of my read on it. But yeah,
I think it's fair.
Yeah,
I think it's 100% fair. Yeah.
Expectations. What do we think?
Ah, I'm gonna look like a clown either way, I think. It's hard, man. I think they are quite a brittle team currently, and obviously had a really good run. Have also gone out of EWC. I think they got. Oh no, sorry, they qualified
They
to
qualified. They
EWC.
qualified.
Because Heretics had already had an invite
Yeah,
spot.
didn't have to play the qualifier.
Obviously, the peak of this team is they can win the whole thing. They have the quality for it, the play quality for it for sure. For me, I think it will be about. First of all, it's a two-pronged thing. First of all, I want to see how they deal with maybe some of the underdogs, how they deal with them. I mean, they lost to BBL and EF this split,
Yeah,
which is an interesting sign if you understand the fact that they lost to two Turkish teams, and that when you're playing against these Chinese teams and Pacific teams, that can give you the same almost problems as the Turkish
yeah,
teams do. So that's going to be a super interesting point, right? And you'd back them to be able to do it just based off player quality, and if they're in the correct mindset. I do think they're going to have a lot more momentum going into this tournament than they had at the start. So I think expectations reasonably for them should be that they make it out of groups no matter what, and you're probably looking for a top 4 finisher. I think winning for them, whether they'll be able to beat like the PRXs and the G2s and NRGs is going to be super interesting, I would say. But yeah, I would almost put them in the Leviathan bracket, I would say, right
okay,
now. But obviously, they do have a very easy peak in terms of just being able to,
yeah,
as Pipson said, if they just go and win everything, no one's going to be surprised,
yeah. I agree in terms of top 4 final week. That's a big success, right? I think more realistically, you want to get cleaning out of groups, and you want to get one win in playoffs. Because I think this. My feeling on this is I think this is a team. It's going to be the scariest team for the seed 1 teams. G2 PRX Heretics, I consider them winning all of those matchups, which isn't true of a lot of teams coming out of groups, right? I would be surprised if they have enough to go on a serious run. We have seen in recent history, obviously the BBL side of the core has had a pretty bad, you can call it choking, call it whatever you want, but they didn't qualify for the internationals last year after being coming super close to all of them. They got to EWC. They were low key on a tear in EWC. People I was talking to were they might actually be the best team out of Europe at this event, and then they got upset in quarterfinals. I think it was to Heretics.
Mm.
So they've not quite, obviously Chronicle and Dirk, sure, but they haven't quite got that international pedigree. If they get a playoff win, that's actually a high watermark for this org as well in international competitions, depending on how you rate Bangkok. But they obviously did Bangkok. They went through groups. They lost both playoff games. Champs 24, they didn't get out of groups.
Did they not place top 4 at Bangkok?
They did, but it was an 18 tournament.
I think that.
So they
I do remember them beating T1. And did they not also go straight to playoffs in that tournament?
No, that was
Oh,
eight
no.
eight teams. So everyone went into Swiss. They won. They got 2-0 in the Swiss, I think, and then they just crumbled. So they completely fell apart in playoffs. So you can argue whether that was a better performance than it would be getting a playoff win here, getting top 6s. But I think getting top 6s event would probably be better than getting top 4 at Bangkok, in my opinion. That would be a higher watermark. In any case, I think this will kind of be the route of this team most likely. I think they'll get out of groups. Not super comfortably, but to be fair, they are playing. They're playing the Chinese team first, well, which helps, right? So they should win that matchup, and that means they should get out of groups. And I think maybe they win their first game quarterfinals and then lose the next 2. That's kind of what I see as a realistic route for them. But there's a chance they can beat anybody on their day. I think they're the team that is going to be the scariest for the big tournament favourites. So I think
100%.
get top 4 and very successful tournament.
You could see them being as weird as it sounds, considering the overall budget of the project and the players on the project. You could see them being almost the dark horse, which obviously they should be more than that. But I can definitely see them being the most the biggest dark horse, basically, in the sense that they can just knock off every big team. But it's going to be a question about how they deal with the important games and how they get through. For example, the stages you need to get through and how they do it. They do it with flying colors. How they set themselves up for those big games. I think is going to be super important for them.
Yeah. So let's move on. Okay, now on to our. It's funny. I saw a comment. One of the first comments we got on one of these videos was like, "I really like you guys because you're not biased towards one team," and it's like, brother, we're super biased. You know, we're the most biased guys alive. We're just biased towards good, good Valorant, and
Oh well,
also our friends, but also good Valorant.
I would say I'm more biased towards hating people. So it's
Yeah.
it's actually so depending on how you think about it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it just depends on your perspective, But our bias towards heretics worked out apparently, right? So, route to the tournament here. First 2 weeks we've come back 1-2 against Navi. Oh, first week, week 1 we come back, and week 2 this changed, right?
Yeah, because they did lose the first game with Kushmaris.
Yeah, 1-2 against Navi, 0-2 against Liquid. Kushmaris playing comeback roles. 2-1 Carmine, 2-0 Gentlemates, 2-0 Foot. Playoffs, 1-2 against Eternal Fire, surprisingly, then 2-0 BBL, 2-1, 2-1, 3-1 Foot, 3-2 Vitality. Basically ran it all the way back from the bottom of lowers after running it back from the bottom of their group. They've been pretty good. And
Yeah,
I
100%.
think most people would say they are probably favourites or top 3 favourites. There's a question here. I mean, the interesting thing here is you would kind of expect a team like this to be really good. Like the time zone stuff and like the adjusting for, like, considering how short Masters tournaments are now, you kind of think that should make quite a lot of difference. Like that maybe just on the basis of the time zones alone, they should be favourites for this event, like outright. I think you can argue. I mean, you look at EWC for example. Least expect, like last year, least adjustment for the European teams. I kind of thought on that basis, probably European teams are going to be strong. 4 European teams in playoffs, and we are not used to seeing that at all, right? This sort of stuff does matter.
100%.
But in any case, they are certainly in a contention for top 3, contention for your tournament favourites. Best map, we're not going to spend too much time on here because as Salah sort of remarked, we spent so much time.
We've been glazing these guys too much on Lois, man. They can't have to keep happening every episode. You know what I mean? I do like you, Boo, but at some point.
Yeah. So just for the record, 5-3 this week.
I can just quickly, and again, I implore you to go watch the video where we did a deeper analysis on this. But Heretics' understanding of overall how to, especially on attack, how to abuse the information lines and how to basically freeze and the correct timings and play around different zones correctly is just remarkable on this map, and it's one of the reasons why it's just always been their strongest map, right? Or one of their strongest maps, rather.
Yeah. So we are going to. I'm actually going to say they've lost this map twice to Eternal Fire in the midst of an otherwise very good run. They lost with Chamber week 1 to Na'Vi, and then they won. I think every other match, 6 other times they played this map, they won. How do they lose twice to EF on this map without changing comp and without voice being so strong for them? The answer is defense let them down both times, basically. Short answer is they kind of got neon diffed by the enemy team, both times essentially. Like there was a lot of stuff, like, for example, they're taking a long fight, they're like playing up to like here, they overplay their hand, they like give up a pick here. They underestimate how quickly Neon and Razor are able to like link up U2 and burst out of them playing whatever spots they're playing, like here and here. This is kind of been a case a lot of the time, I think, with Heretics on a lot of maps. Like a good Neon, a good Waylay, a really good Raisin Jet can kind of make them look a little bit silly at times because they are inclined to be quite aggressive in their angle selection. I had a good round here actually to illustrate this. While they normally still, in those cases, battle it back to a 4v4 because they're very good at playing off each other, very good at trading, you do sort of see peaks like, like this round, for example. You do sort of see things where it's like, oh. That sort of stuff where basically when it looks bad, it looks really bad, but they should always be getting.
I mean, the idea from them is correct. They did isolate the solo guy and double peaked him. They just got both banged in the head. You know, like
yeah,
that happens.
Like most of the time, you should just win it. You have a 4v4 there, like, and it's fine.
Yeah,
but when
at the worst case, in the best case, you just kill the solo guy and then over-rotate.
Yeah. So when that stuff looks bad, it looks bad, and they have a bit of a vulnerability to doing stuff like that, right? Other than that, still pretty good. Again, we've done a lot on this before. There's not too much to say, so we're not going to focus too much on it, to be fair.
I think a lot of the talking points for them right now are kind of, outside of the game, almost the decision making, right, from us.
Yeah, exactly. So let's move on swiftly with this one to their worst map, because I think this is interesting. This is their Pearl. They've struggled to find an identity on Pearl. And it's interesting because we were also praising them, I think, in week 1 for the Chamber comp and how they were playing that. They won this map in week 1. So week 1, the comp was as follows. It was Astra, Chamber, Arbor, Neon Sky. Won this. Same comp week 2. Lost 10-13 to Liquid, quite a poor defense. Didn't show again for the entirety of the stage 1. Came to playoffs, they changed the comp to this. Neon Phoenix. So pretty much just riding the meta sort of thing, how this comp is developing. You're running Cypher instead of Chamber. This did not work. 8-13 against Tunnel of Fire. Big reason why they dropped down to lower brackets. Came back for finals. They had to play in finals, obviously, because of the bans. Changed on to these two on Jet Neon and get the rest of the comp the same. Still didn't work. Atrocious on attack. Okay on defense, but atrocious on attack. 2-10-1/2. What's it called? Yeah. Atrocious attack. The interesting thing is, I would have expected for the switch off the Chamber comp to the Cypher, that it would be their defense that would suffer, right? Because it naturally makes sense. The Chamber unlocks a lot in terms of the pressure you put on defense. Losing him makes you play a lot further back, particularly on B. You lose some of the A line here, or you can still keep it with Neon. Restricts your defense a lot. The attack's been the problem. And I had a really, really good route.
I can already give you a little bit of a diagnosis of why that happened, is especially against Vitality, because they played the Jet against Vitality. Yeah. When they switched to Jet can be the same thing as Chamber in terms of B long control, right? Because you can just stick the Jet on the line, and the Jet is as good as Chamber, if not better in some situations, especially when it comes to defense. The issue is that they're playing Fade, and Fade is, as Anders said, awful for taking deep B info, and especially when they're playing as Vitality, who abused almost the Chamber playing the B area, then I can imagine they just completely collapse against that, because I don't see a great way in their comp of basically being able to push that Chamber off consistently without losing someone, outside of, throwing a cage, using Astra fake smokes, and basically the Neon wall to just run down, and by the time you do all of those things, you can just still lose people,
Yeah, I mean, this one I had identified as a good example, like a good microcosm of just the struggles they're having on this attack as well. So this was an ult round. Get this up here. This was, I believe, round 4 against Vitality. So fade
you see how they have to already use that smoke, by the way, to scale.
Yeah, they're using that to smell like that. So they fade out. They have 2 smokes. They do this like weird smoke on heaven. This is like hold under as well, and they have to hold the top of it. They have no they've used everything to take this very bad plant as well. Like you don't want to take this plant if you can, because obviously it's very easy for a team to steal you off, even if you just then fall back to here. This is like, it's not awful, but this is like a panicky plant almost. This is like not optimal. And yeah, they've taken no space. All these resources are sitting, they've taken no space, they're still sitting inside the smoke, still sitting inside the smoke. And arguably Woot can play a little bit better here, he can get to backhaul rather than having to peek back out here for some reason. But
big issue is that they're not able to actually stop them from coming out those chokes that you want to stop them from on the defense side without basically losing people. You saw that the only way they could stop it was Woot peeking and unfortunately just gets traded and dies, right?
Yeah.
They don't have a way to basically delay. The way you want to be able to play that site normally is you want to be able to basically, in a post point, you want to play it as if you're defending it, right?
Yeah.
And they're just not able to do those things with this comp, and also especially if they're going to use so much util to get into a site that's being played for retake anyways.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of feels like they're almost playing for a post-plant centric style. That
without
works
having the resources to do it.
Yeah, because that works with Harbor, certainly, because you have obviously the walls, you have the orb, you have the blind, all this sort of stuff's really good for that. Double Initiator works. You play something like the Teo comp still. If you want to stick with that, you can do that, right? Does not work with Neon Phoenix, does not work with Jet Neon. if you don't have the threat of like your Phoenix is going to pop out into spawn, like you take the space aggressively, Phoenix pops out here, challenges the players here, challenges the players here, for example. You don't have that threat. It's way too easy for teams to just flood on you and just take everything off of you and then just get a clean defuse off. And this is the thing about Heretics in general. This is not a team that does well in these situations. Like they don't play well in Anarchy, basically. I know there's a mystique about this team still with regards to Los Niños, the young shooters just going around doing stuff. This is very much Boo.
No, they're a coach's team.
Yeah.
This is like a coaches and agil's team.
Yeah, this is Boo, Neil, and Vepper's team. This is their team. They're very structured. They have a lot of protocols. They need to play their protocols. They do play their protocols. Their protocols are letting them down on this particular map, but it's also why they're kind of trying to force this style of play, which doesn't really work on this map. This is eminently fixable, I think. And this is why we didn't spend too much talking about the Lotus as well, because they're bad. It's one of those teams where the bad maps here, the bad stuff is not that severe. It's stuff that can be fixed. And even if if you're struggling with it, if this is hitting the very bottom of your map pool, you're good, bro. You're still doing well. Bree's also a bit of a problem in this regard. I think you can go for double initiator there, for example. Well, have it work as long as someone can figure out how to play Harbor.
I want them to bring the Harbor back on this map. I think they actually had a good idea with it. They just needed to flesh it out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so as well. But yeah, this is kind of what's failing them so far. But it puts them in. I still think it puts them in pretty good stead going forward because, yeah, like I say, it means this meta is a little bit of an awkward fit for them. With regards to, obviously, they tried the Phoenix. The Phoenix didn't really work out for them. I think Phoenix is going to be a very important agent. They're going to have to figure out a way to. I think they need to figure out a better way to counter it coming into this tournament because they're not going to pick up Phoenix for this tournament. I don't think they played it against. When were they playing? Was it just they just played it on Pearl basically, and they played it on Haven for a bit as well, and then they completely dropped it coming into playoffs. It's not going to get picked back up. It's just not something that works for them. They're playing by the way that weird the chamber stage comp, so this is a team that will take these swings as well in comp selection and stuff like that. To be fair, but they need to figure out what they're doing on Pearl. They need to figure out in general how they're going to work against the Phoenix rather than working with it because it doesn't work for them, unfortunately. Just not their place. Okay, so who do we think? Moving on. Key player, who do we think?
I think there's an obvious answer in my head, but I'm interested in what you say.
Yeah, this is hard.
For me, there's an obvious one because for me, Boo and the coaching staff are amazing. And I just want to go into a little tangent here. In a world where we're seeing assistant coaches take the head coach's job in 9 out of or however many teams in the EMEA and God knows what's going on everywhere else. I like the fact that Heretics have stuck behind a traditional good coaching staff, an amazing coaching staff with an amazing IGL, and they've trusted it completely, and they've been allowed to make the changes that they want to make, and they've been allowed that authority. And I really credit Heretics as an organization for realizing this from the first year that they had Neil and Weber.
Yeah.
So they're obviously great, and Boo obviously is great. I think Rien's has just always been incredible. I think Wu obviously and Kushmaras obviously are going to be things, but for me, the key player is Benji. If Benji is good, they will be good. If Benji is struggling, they struggle, and it's for the same reasons that Yetuje is good for a footballist. It's those reasons that he is the guy who will do things that just, and specifically with Benji, he's the kind of player that when he's playing weak side, he's really good at, for example, stopping those peaks that T teams want to do. He's really good at shutting that down and making space. He's also on defense super good at being able to peek out, like we saw on Lotus where it failed. Even though it went badly, that's the kind of thing you need, and the fact that they have him doing that a lot, and when he's doing those things, he is just incredible. So I think for me, Benji is the key player, and he's a lovely boy as well, and he just when he's on, and when he's on, it feels impossible to play against them, to be honest, man.
Yeah, I think Benji's a fair shout on this, to be fair. I think there's a case you can make for Woot with regards to essentially. Remember, he's been pushing for a more aggressive role now, and he's played historically. He's always been a player where it's like he's kind of been in that in between thing where he kind of plays a little bit too conservative to be a duelist, but then plays quite kind of too aggressively for himself to play being an initiator or other roles.
He's a safe kind of player.
Yeah, exactly. It's like say if like Keiko as well. It's like an EU thing with this. To be fair, we used to see like he was very, very important for them on the split against Vitality, for example, taking that over the line. That could have easily been a 3-1 to Vitality if he doesn't show up there. 7 first kills on that map. Yeah, I think Benji's fair. To be fair, I think that's probably a fair shout.
I think with Woot, for example, he will do really good if Koshmaris and Benji are giving him the space to play out of, right?
Yeah.
He can struggle sometimes to create that space and be that duelist that grabs people by the hair and drags them into the correct positions. So that's why, while I do think that they're all amazing, I do think Benji is one of those like key players where the things he does just allows people to play better on his team. And he's also that hype guy, and he's also that guy who makes everyone feel good, and he's just a lovely human in general, right? He's like Baby Bay, where he's such a good kid and so good at everything that it does piss me off a little bit how good he is, and it makes me hate him a little bit because not only is this guy got like 5 million followers on Twitter and probably like 7 houses from his Fortnite days, and he's also just a lovely guy and also just insane at Valorant as well. So it does piss me off a little bit, but yeah, for me he is just that guy.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, so that wraps up our EMEA episode.
No, we in expectations.
Oh, we didn't do expectations. I mean, do we even need to say it for Heretics? They got to win this event, man. They got to win this event.
And again, I love Heretics. Heretics is by far my favorite team in Valorant right now because they had a really, really shit first year, guys, by the way. Like Clown Fiesta first year. But they trusted the IGL, trusted the coaches, and look what it got them. And then that first year, they came second in everything. And everyone was like, oh, including myself, will they be able to get over that hump? And then they came into the second year. And again, it was a bit of an odd year. They went from strength to strength, but they did end up winning that EWC. But unfortunately for them, that EWC, no one really cared about it. It didn't really count the same as a Masters, even though the prize pool was bigger and all of that. Like, and the Orgs love being in EWC. No one really gave them the same credit as as the other teams who won Masters and Champs, obviously. Yeah. But then now that they've been able to win EWC and win EMEA, and I think that process has gone so healthy in the way that they made the changes they needed to make. They kept getting better, and now they finally got their hands on like the VCT trophy and also the EWC. Now I believe that they can be winners, and I believe that they once they're in that position to where they need to be able to get over the hump, they will go over that hump. So I think for them it's first or bust.
Yeah, it's an interesting note. I mean, it's something that I've almost actually forgot. Outside of EWC, they hadn't actually won. They hadn't won a domestic stage ever. We know they came second at Champions, came second at Shanghai, but they hadn't actually won a domestic stage even. It's always been they've always felt a little bit short, either to Fnatic or to Resurgent Vitality, I believe.
Vitality,
or Liquid One kickoff.
Liquid One,
yeah. I forgot. No, the Vitality One kickoff rather, and then they lost Liquid in like lower bracket finals, whatever it was, to not make it to Bangkok. Yeah. I mean, I said this with G2 that I kind of feel like, but I think both G2 and Heretics have a lot to prove coming to this tournament, right? And I said with G2, I have a feeling that this may be like their Karrigan moment, right? I don't know if you can say that the same way with Heretics, because I mean, I guess it kind of like you could say it for Heretics as well. To be fair, I think they've proven a little bit more to me already, to be fair, than G2 in terms of the international stage on the basis of that EWC victory and the basis of
the finals runs. And,
it's like, obviously it's not. This isn't CS, right? It is. I think getting to finals, like it's. Yeah, it's
very impressive when teams make back-to-back finals, and that is a very impressive thing to do in Valorant.
Whereas in something with CS, it's still impressive, but it kind of gets. I mean, there's more tournaments. It kind of gets like you have
to win the tournament.
Yeah, there's a slightly fairer bent to like the quote-unquote label of finals choker there, right? But yeah, this could be. I mean, both of these seem to have a lot to prove coming to this tournament, and I think if I had to guess, I feel like this is going to be a G2 Heretics final, and G2 will edge it. But
what a banger that would be!
Yeah. But I mean, 2 favorites coming to the final has never happened. I'm pretty sure in the history of these events, so probably won't happen. But let's hope.
Probably they'll both go out like first round or some shit, and then it will be like Leviathan.
Vitality will take out G2 in upper bracket, and they'll like limp to 5th and 6th, and Heretics will just not turn up on the day and will somehow lose to. I don't know. But yeah, they top 3 is like the minimum they can be expecting for this tournament, and I think they should be serious contenders to win it. They should probably be second favourites.
In theory, is this not the home team, by the way?
Yeah, this is.
Everyone was really upset Fnatic didn't get that, but this is like free UK people.
Yeah, I mean, people don't care about coaches. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
and
obviously,
also Weber is Welsh, so
yeah,
whether how much it is his whole tournament
yeah.
is interesting, but
I mean, the amount of booing I got at champs kind of shows you something how people don't care about the coaches on the team.
finish a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
outro.
But that's us. That's our D for the EMEA. So I think we have figured out the order now. This will be the third one out, and the fourth one will be both looking at the China teams and basically just recapping our thoughts of the tournament in general. So hope to see you there.